I'll share my screen and let me know if you can see it. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Which one are you seeing?
I'm seeing you on the left and Olympia on the right.
So let me share my screen because I think that I'm having issues with that. Hold on. Permissions to set it. Setting is flagging me to share. Hold on. Security and privacy. Sorry, I didn't test that. My mistake.
Now a third person came up. That was an L. So,
Hey, there we go.
there you go.
Rock and roll. Your mic is cutting out now, though.
Sorry, I left
There
it
you go.
blocked. Okay, so it's nice to be here with you. I am not going to delay it a little more. So today we'll discuss a little bit about Azure DevOps for CI/CD pipelines with Azure SQL. I'm Carlos Lopez. I'm cloud data engineer. I'm Microsoft MVP data platform. So that's my credentials. This is me. This is my site. This is a little bit of me. So I'm a blogger, speaker, a local community leader. So for Guatemala. So we chat a little bit about that. You can find me later if you want. We can discuss whatever you you have. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer. So for today, we can discuss a little bit about DevOps, the perspective. Uh, we will focus on the plan, the develop, deliver, and operate, but mostly on the develop and deliver phases. Because for us at data engineers, we focus more into data. So that's on the develop the script part and the deliver to infrastructure as code, for example. So basically, that's my main concerns for these for today. So the other for the develop phases and deliver phases, we will discuss it in a little bit of demo about describing the scenario of the DevOps for us as Azure SQL engineers, because what we'll work is for with Azure SQL, right? So let's talk a little bit of DevOps cycle for data. That's not for data. This is the classical loop. So this is for everyone. So when we see the classical loop, we see DevOps cycle, we think CI/CD process. So right away, something we already have, we take for granted that this is something cultural as well that is requiring to in our company. So basically, we this is cultural, this is infrastructure, this is software that involves the company, but also, we have to be with the understanding that this concerns us all. And for example, we need to know for as a little bit of agile developing phases. We need to know about user stories, to do categorization, for example, to do for example, we need to know a little bit of Scrum. Scrum poker estimation to do the story points, for example, for Fibonacci to uh, to mark the story points, for example. So basically, that's not us to be like a Scrum master, but we need to know. So that's why I put the classical loop as part of us all. So as being part of it, we need to know the sprint planning, the daily the stand up, the sprint review, and sprint retrospective. We need to be there in all the process. So for us to as data engineers, changing our uh, from idle, for example, I come from knowing idle, changing to DevOps. That's a different culture. So, and how to embrace that as the SQL developers, but we're not just SQL developers. We have to be as a DBA as well. So everything is here, but the scope has been changed. So the environment has changed. So that is why this is important mentioning that the classical the DevOps is the we have to understand the culture because it changes from how to integrate and how to deliver, right? So basically, that's what I wanted to show you with this picture. And now, if you see the difference, I'm just going to return a little bit. The difference is the loop changes. This is the classical loop for the books, but this is how Azure DevOps cycle it is for the product. For the product, we have four phases. We have plan, we have develop, deliver, and operate. This is how it works for the design Azure DevOps cycle. Not that it's different, but it's just the culture for the Microsoft tool, right? For the infrastructure to work, how the philosophy of the tool works. So it provides a variety of services so that they can plan, we can work, we can collaborate, and we can code as a team, right? To build and deploy software and services. That's the main idea, to develop and deploy services, right? So most of the DevOps teams rely on several tools and build custom tool chains for each phase and application life cycles. So when we look at DevOps classical loop that we see before the diagram, we imagine now that we are analyzing the DevOps followed by Microsoft, the DevOps product. So uh, we will focus, as I mentioned earlier, in the develop and deliver phases, because that is where the construction of the infrastructure as code that we will see to build the SQL server or the server itself we will focus on that. So basically, that's that in that phases. So that is just to let you know that that is the diagram. So I'm not going to school you on epics and user stories and all, but this is like the flow from the that we are used uh, to go from DevOps, right? From Scrum, using an epic and feature user stories and task, issuing bugs, for example, and tasks. But this is just to mention because in Azure DevOps, you can do everything on that. So basically, that's just mentioning because that is part of the tooling, right? So we are going to go to configuring the Azure DevOps itself. So right now, we will discuss a little bit about the agents in the pipelines. And the tool itself has these uh, machines because they're if you see it like they're virtual machines that lets you run your agent, which is the connection to the pipeline software that lets you to do whatever task you are asking them to do. That's basically the agent. So you have two ways to do it. You have Microsoft self-hosted agent. I'm sorry, a Microsoft hosted agent, which runs in the Azure platform. That's paid. And you have the self-hosted agent. That is that can be whatever machine you have on your house or whatever you it can be your laptop. We will see it in I can show you that I'm already running a self-hosted agent just let you know, so you can see what it is and how it looks like. So you can choose it from whatever you like: Linux, Windows, Mac OS. Myself, I'm running Mac OS, so whatever you choose is fine. So the only thing that it does is that it connects to the Azure DevOps, uh, to your account, and allows them to know what is the machine that is connecting to the service that is running. So that's everything that it does, and it is a pull a service that is continually running, and as long as you keep the connection alive or the virtual machine alive, it will run your pipeline. So it is made to for you to run your pipelines. So that's their purpose. And here it is where you choose it and how do you what you choose on it. So here are some specs for the self-hosted agents. This is the images that you have. These are the YAML files that you can VM images that you can choose from. These are the specs, and as you can see, there are. I took this like 8 months or something like that, so that's a little bit old. But you can choose whatever you like. That are different OS versioning, so that's good for you. Um, continuing on self-hosted agents, the process is really simple. You have to create a PAT, which is personal access token, where you have to create a new token, and then you will be asked. You will have a URL in a well, I'm sorry. You will generate a token that you will copy, and you will be asked to put it when you are running your bash or your terminal or your PowerShell terminal. You will be asked to place the token. So when you put your user account URL and the token, you will activate your software, and this is the portal, and you will see it active like that, like this. So that is what I was saying. This is your organization. This is the name. This is the how you configured. If you wanted, you want that path token expires, how many times you want to get them to live, which what is the access roles that you want to give them to the scope that you want to give to your path, and then when that is created, that token, you will generate that script. So with that, you can paste it right now. So basically, that's when you put your login credentials. You will ask your token, and then you can run it, and then it will connect to the server and it will run. So that I took the liberty to take a little bit of time to explain you about this, because that I think it's a good option for you if you are trying to test Azure DevOps for the first time. So you can run self-hosted agent, and so you are not build with the hosted agents from the Azure. So that's a good notice on that. So you can test that. So basically, that's how it looks like, and you will see your agent running there. Okay. So I don't know if there are any questions. Please let me know, or I can answer. So they cannot. I'm not. I don't have any issues if there are. So, I'm sorry, I jump a little bit. So now we will overview the pipelines, what they are, and what are their benefits, right? Against the different, we are talking about pipelines as part of the CI/CD, right? Because this is the process that this is the software that allows you to control the delivering the the shipping and the delivering phases. So basically, what you do is you're changing methodologies, right? So you're changing the ways that you do your software. So with that, the overview of this is that the platform and the language are independent. So with that, this is a plus because you are not language dependent or interoperability. You have different type of repositories. You can integrate it with different software that there is in the market. With the biggest one, name it Git, GitHub, or whatever you like, there is. So basically, that's a good. And the platform and language independent, which means you can build code on every platform using code based on what you want, on your needs, right? On the environment that you are. It can be integrated with different repositories, as I told you before. Repos like GitHub, Enterprise, Bitbucket, and so on. You have lots of extensions, standards, and community-driven standards. So they're available for you to build your code handling custom tasks. So that's good, and allows you to deploy your code into different cloud vendors. That's something good as well, because not all we think that everything is on Microsoft, but there is not. It allows you to connect to the different cloud vendors, but at the end, you have to have your Azure DevOps license. So there is a little bit of as well. You are part of the Azure DevOps, and this is more if you want to integrate with other cloud solutions that you need to communicate. So that's a good solution to integrate clouds, right? Not just the Azure known. You can work with containerized applications such as Docker. You can use all the Azure infrastructure with Azure Container Registry or Kubernetes, if you like. So basically, that's integrating you a lot of solutions to deliver, right? So allows you to create a lot for infrastructure, I mean. So let's return a little bit to databases. So we talked that we needed to create code. Now we're not seeing the databases as hard objects. We're seeing more like the code of the databases. So the assets is the code. So in this methodology, if you will, we need to think that we need to be very careful with all the code and the versioning, because it is delivering fast but well. But we have to control what we have. So basically, this is the objects to check on the database. And why we have to be very careful with this is because of the versioning. Because every time we ship and deliver, every time that we are doing pushing requests, we are creating new versioning, we are creating every time that we integrate and create new versioning of the stabilizing applications, we are changing the database as well as part of the objects. So right now we have to think of how we have to think that the scripts are the most important things that that database have. I know that the data is important, but the problem is that we're seeing not the problem. We are in this scope. We're seeing the database for migrations and for migration methodology. So in the migration, when you're migrating a database, you are always doing some changes, DDL changes or DML changes to the database. So every time that we integrate a new version or doing a PR, we're doing something to the database because it will run there, unless we say that we're not going to do it. But we need to be very careful that everything is on the latest version. So what we need to think is in all these objects, right? List, collection, data dictionary. Sorry, I shortened the word. Data dictionaries, DDL for all the definitions. If this is the latest version that we have and that doesn't have any bugs in it, that doesn't create that we might create some bugs every time that we create integrate a new version, right? So we need to be very careful that this is the stable version, as well as the DML that creates all the, the definitions that we're introducing. So when we're seeing all these objects, we're thinking in infrastructure as a code model. So that is why we're thinking database into this model. And therefore, we need a language capable to manage or handle this infrastructure. So this is the database as database developer. Every time that is running the the life cycle to integrate something or to push something to the repository, for example. But what about when we are trying to create new servers? When we are trying to create to deliver create new databases or clone a server? So that is when we need another kind of language, and that can be, because it is not the only one. We can use YAML, and we can create infrastructure as code, and we can manage that into our pipelines. So what can we do with it? Um, I think that I lost you a little bit, but bear with me with a little bit. These are the tools that you can use when you're trying to manage your databases. You can use it everything from Visual Studio Code. You can use it through Azure Data Studio. You can use PowerShell to control your Azure infrastructure, right? And also you can use it for your logical database tasks, right? For Redgate SQL search and SQL prompt to see the differences in the objects that we were discussing a little bit. You can use everything right now, right here, to see the logical work for the DBA, for the database. Sorry. So I'm sorry about confusing you with this part of the YAML. I think that we will see it in a few slides. So bear with me there. So um, again, as I was saying, uh, since you are seeing the database as scripts that can affect the database every time that pipeline is implemented, you have to have best practices to see what you have to control. So basically, your most important task is to control your versioning, the code control versioning. You have to see the object level history. You have to control the insight of that object, that how they change, and to do a code analysis rule, to implement code analysis rules. For example, if you're having some team members, and that happens to me this week. I have a new SQL dev, which is junior dev. So how can I pass all that the devs and I have already know, by because we are in the company for more than 1 year, for example. So or we have a document for that. But when you left a new SQL dev alone, and you expect them, hey, do this store procedure and give it to me in a week. When you see this store procedure, he will implement the naming differently because he thinks differently, right? So doing a code analysis rules, implementing a code analysis rules into your pipeline, that's a good idea, for example. And the naming, the formatting, the managing the versioning, that's the important thing that you have to do. I know that everything that I have discussed right now is a SQL dev perspective or database dev perspective, but that's part of the job, right? So we need to be sure that works fine. So how can you do it? You can use, for example, I put the two examples that I'm trying to use right now. I am using Flyway community version to use the part of the code control version, for example, or you can use the SQL Fluff, which is an open source tool, to run your code analysis rules. That are tools that may help you or assess you while you are using another uh, uh, while you're doing your daily job. So that may help you. So that's just uh, suggestions. So I know that we're discussing a lot of data migrations, but this is because that's the one of the approaches that can be done when you are doing Azure pipelines. That's a possibility or a way to do it. So you have to be at least uh, open to know that this will happen in some time. That in some environments they may change to use, for example, entity framework, which is my case. They do everything on uh, uh, in .NET Core, and they implement in Entity Framework to do this shipping to the PR and integrating to the Azure DevOps, for example, and doing the pipelines. The other can be Flyway, and or you can use another right now. But these are just examples or what you can do, right? So what is the purpose of these migrations, and how this will be or can be integrated with DevOps. So at the end, Azure DevOps is the complete software that allows you to execute whatever job you put them. But at the end, what you are trying to see is that database as a software, and instead of looking your virtual machines, actual how do you say this, your on-prem databases, that may change. That scope may change. So I'm just giving you a different scenario that can uh, imply to a different methodology of using an ORM or related relationship manager, right? So I don't know if object relational mapping, sorry. So I don't know if you have any experience about that. I don't know if this is the idea that you were expecting on this session, but I just wanted to let you with a little bit of a splash of what can be done with that. So the deployment scenario. Now we are returning to the infrastructure as code right now. We changed it from the data definition layer and all the database code. So right now we're talking about infrastructure as code, thinking in creating the SQL Server itself to the Azure environment. You can have it in your repositories, for example. You can push it to your YAML code, which is the language I told you before, that is the markup language used for infrastructure as code. This is an old code, but it is used to implement it for the infrastructure as code for declarative implementations. And there you can trigger pipelines to execute and deploy your Azure SQLs, or in this case for me, Azure SQLs. But you can implement whatever you like. You can create Cosmos DB. That's the beauty of infrastructure as code. You can implement whatever object you wanted to build, right? So for us right now is that databases, RMDBs, right? So I hope that I haven't lose you there. So if you have any questions, please let me know. This is a pipeline. This is YAML, and this is the code. How you are putting a little bits of code using YAML in your pipeline when you are defining your structure. Here I'm using a bad reference because I'm putting my subscription here. I'm trusting you here. So um, no worries. This was already due. It doesn't work. So no worries. This is the Azure CLI codes to run your creation for your machines. First, the first line, we will see it a little bit later, but first you have to define your resource group. So this is the line that creates the resource group. This is the line that creates the SQL server as Azure SQL. And here is when you create your Azure DB SQL general purpose with license, with service object basic, with all your capabilities that you allowed it. And I put the model as serverless. So this is an Azure SQL serverless SQL server database, sorry, in our SQL server. So this is basically the YAML structure that you can use. And as you can see, you can implement whatever task you like. So this is a way to do infrastructure as code to create a SQL server. So to configure the Azure DB into a pipeline, we'll try to do this kind of example to develop, build, and publish the model to develop the SQL database, right? So basically, this is when you are creating something that you have your T-SQL, you put it in your develop phases, you have your DAC you build it into your DAC is a model if you have your .NET Core or .NET Visual Studio, you can build it there and you can publish into your environment. So basically, we will do a little bit of workflow to do the creation of the database and to deploy the changes to the SQL Server. So this is what we'll do, and I hope that it works right now. So I know that we're mixing a little bit, but since Azure DevOps has a lot of to offer, here are a little uh, some of samples to do, for example, code analysis, code and testing, and this is some tools that can help you guidance for when you're doing some part of the testing in your SQL code, in your normal SQL code. But I hope that this helps you. If not, you can use Flyway as I mentioned. You can use SQL Fluff, and that's another way to do it. So here I leave the materials to do it. Here are Davide Mori blogs. This is a really good solution, a complete solution that he did here. I recommend this for you. Here are some Azure SQL documentation, the front end page, and where every concept is supported. Here are the docs related to the pipelines agents, the YAML files, and the agent pools that we discussed, how to integrate it to the GitHub repository, and how to continue on the Azure SQL MS docs learning path to do the Azure SQL workshop, for example. That's a really good way to start in your Azure SQL. So if you haven't been able to do Azure SQL serverless solutions, for example, you can go from scratch and do it everything there. So this is the code sample that I did for this demo. So I leave it in my GitHub, so you can, if you want to. I use it in another session, so I leave it the same name of the folder, so I can not mess up there. So let's go to the demo right now. Part of the demo, sorry, because I had an issue with my credentials. Some hours ago, I think that someone reject my credentials, so I think that I'm not going to be able to execute the pipeline itself, but I'm going to give you all the roadmap to it. So I don't know if are we good with the questions, or can I continue?
I'd definitely like to see like the actual pipelines. Like I'm curious to see like within the UI, like your actual as CLI scripts and like how you're
Ah,
running the migrations and how you're
okay,
actually preparing them.
Also, does
Okay.
it mind working all hours?
Yes, we'll go to the study.
You're sure?
okay, okay. I will continue then. If there are any, because I didn't have the complete solution because I just did some examples, as you are referring. I didn't have the time to complete everything, but I give the roadmap. So I'll go to the edit the pipeline. Let's see, and explain a little bit because it was just a explanatory to do the SQL creation. So basically, this is the assistant to do the YAML there. Here the test to execute. Sorry for that. This can scare you a little bit. So this is the VM to execute the pull for the creation for the task. Here is some step to do the first creation of the logical server. I use variable instead here of using to get my Azure subscription. This is the type of the script that I'm running, and these are the lines that I'm executing. First, I'm doing the Azure SQL command to create the resource. I'm explaining the resource group. I'm creating the SQL server here, and I'm putting the logical name. As you can see, everything is the variable that I'm using. So I'm replacing, instead of leaving the hard code of every single line that I'm using here. Okay. So instead of using the resource group name, like put right here, I use a variable. Instead of using the name of the SQL Server itself, I'm putting a variable which is getting, which is simply a text that is getting my name, right? Whatever I put there. So this is the same for the admin user. This is the SA password. This is the SA user that I'm giving, and this is the password, right? So this is the SA. I'm creating the SQL Server here, and then I'm adding an admin to the group, to the SQL Server, right? This is the instruction to give to create that into the SQL Server. And then I'm creating a firewall rule. This is the name of the firewall rule, and these are the IPs that I'm given right now. None. So that is the actual inline execution. So if you want to add more, you can use the assistant, and you can specify that you want an Azure CLI. When you do that, it will create more YAML instructions to create a new task. It will here you will specify the resource management connection that you are using, so you can give your subscription that you are authorized to use. When I do that, it will fail because I have an issue with my account. When you execute here, when you do this, you can specify which one are you selecting depending on the environment that you're using. For my case, I will use shell. And then in the script path, you can use whatever you like, inline script or script path. If you use a script path, then you are attaching the script. If not, then you are inlining the code that you're doing. So what I did is copy and paste of the code of the Azure CLI code directly to here, and you can code paste it here, and it will create your new lines. So when you do that, it will create the code here, right? Since I didn't put anything, then it is blank, but basically the inline script is the part of where I put it here. So let's continue. The second part is creating the elastic pool for the Azure SQL elastic pool and database. So the first line creates sends the command that says Azure CLI SQL elastic pool create with the resource group that we are specifying, the logical SQL server name, the elastic pool name that we're putting, a general purpose, and for example, I'm using Gen 5. This can also be put a variable instead of putting there, and the number of CPUs that you're using. So I'm using 1, and that is another variable you can choose. Where you can see the variables, you can see it right here, variables, and you can see who your variables are. You can add more, and these are the names that you're putting, right? So that's a way to manage your security there. So I think that I explained the resource group, the elastic pool. Okay, so then I create another SQL DB explaining the resource group, the SQL server, the name, and the elastic pool that I just create in the above line. So basically, that is what it does. That is the script. Leave. That is the one that I wanted to show you. Let me see if I have another a little bit more complex to do. I think that it feels the same. Let me see on the repo. Create SQL server, deploy all. Yeah, I have the complete one here, which is the create the logical file, then creates it. The idea, I really don't want to bore you with all what it does, but this is what it builds the DAC pack for the SQL project. So this is the other YAML file that I have that pulls up with the articles from the DAC pack in the SQL database project that there is already on to generate this deployment. So basically, these are the tasks with the complete one. So this is the one I show you. This is just explanatory, which is just a simple script, and this is the complete, the whole meat and potatoes. So that's the part of the pipelines. So also here is the solutions that I use. I use the data warehouse, for example, using the worldwide importer solution to do the fact tables and all the scripts. So I put the solution of the tables so I can integrate that into the project. So that is the idea. But the problem is, since I cannot run it, it will fail, because when you go to the pipelines and you execute, let's see if I can show you the problem. Runs. I'll retain, then I'll see it. When I run it manually, you'll see that it will fail because it will take whatever I have, and since my credential is not allowing me, it will fail. So sorry for that. I'm sorry.
That's
really
okay. We believe you.
sorry. Okay. So I just wanted to show you the settings, the project settings then. So this is the part when you can integrate your project to your GitHub. For example, you see I have, you can use the Git, the normal Git, or you can use the GitHub. So here is the connection you trust, and you can use your personal GitHub to connect. this is the project configuration. This is where you can set your iterations, sprints. You can see you can configure your all your configuration for your team, all your security for the team, how are going to manage your backlog, how you're going to manage your user story. These are the boards. This is the part of the boards, as well as the permission, the teams, and how you're going to integrate it with that. Here is the part with the agent pools that we were discussing. Here, this is the self-hosted agent, and here is the hosted agent in Azure. So when you see the self-hosted agent, as I think I don't have it right here, or it's not running. Let's see. There is where you run your self-hosted agent and or your Azure hosted agent that fail. Okay, so the problem is that why do you need the self-hosted agent, or why do you want a Microsoft hosted agent? Is because of this. If you have a self-hosted, you can do 2 parallel jobs, one free parallel job. These you have to be very careful on what you need. Depending on what is your solution, this is what you have. And the minutes per month that you have for one parallel job, for example. So that depends on how do you want to go. So with self-hosted agents, well, you're not billed, so that's a good way to start, right? So that is one I wanted to show you, I think. The other is the service connection. Here, this is the one. When you connect your service to your Azure Resource Manager, you might want to select that. So when you do that, this is all the options that you have. You have a lot of options where you can integrate it to your infrastructure as code. When you connect it to yourself to your subscription, it will get your details from your account, and you will specify the resource group where you want to deploy your objects, the service connection name that you will put for your tests, and the description of what it does, and granting permissions to the pipelines. I'm doing this because every pipeline I want to have access. So when I do the saving, this is your okay. So in your case, you are good to go, and this will save, and you will have a connection, and all the pipelines that you execute will execute with the subscription that you specified here. So okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. I will return to the slides. I think I have another one. No, I think that's it. That's it from my side. These are my social network. If you want to hang out, or you can discuss whatever you want. I can show whatever example I have. If you want to test, please ping me. Don't worry. So glad to help. Really, I'm really happy to be here with you. And I don't know if you have any questions, or you want to talk a little bit about something, or something wasn't clear. Please let me know.
I want to hear about bad things that have happened to you, because I'm assuming you're doing this in production, right? So like,
Yep.
what kind of like lessons learned did you take away from this? Like, for example, I'm terrified of doing database migrations through automation like this, because what if it drops a column and, oh crap, I can't get that back, you know?
It happens. It happens. And it already happened because the problem is first, not everything that, or my experience is, not everything that the software does is automated. You have to be very careful with the tool. For example, for entity framework, if you don't import, then it has the caps naming, and there was an issue with the naming of the file. and it was some developer left a blank space there. It didn't import it when the build was made. So for example, when we did push to PR and did a new versioning, and when we integrated, it was a maintenance for to run all changing the options for the indexes, for example. That was that was the problem. So it didn't run all the scripts. It just ran 3 of 4 because the fourth line in the entity framework had a small line in there. So even with all this tooling that we have, we need to have documentation. That's we cannot live without it, because we need to know what we're doing. The other is the other bad example that happened to me a lot. I think that it was on December or November, was that we were executing new scripts for store procedures to do that does the report, and which I changed uh, date times or something like that in the store procedure. So when I created this store procedure, this changed. The problem was that the report our reports are in some, how do you um, how do you say this, it was deployed into our portal, but this is a container running Kubernetes. So when we execute this new version with the different date formatting, it wasn't accepted by the portal, so it failed badly, and it was
Oh,
because of
like a
the,
locale issue.
yeah, yeah. And the problem is, since the problem is that the we shipped and the version of the container for the pod, for the Kubernetes pod, when they created with a different type format for the dates. So it was completely different, and everything was ugly, and it was bad. And it was because the SQL Server store procedure had datetime offset time of data type, and the front end, it is in Node.js with something tool, Kera, I think, that managed the dates. So it was a different kind of date that it handled. So it screwed all the dates. So the problem there, it was that I didn't have a code analysis rule that will help me to say, hey, everything that goes from store procedure to the front end need to be date time only, not date time offset, for example. So that will help me. So that is why I started to use SQL Fluff to do the code analysis review. And also, you need a peer review with a teammate of yours that shows you, hey, you did it bad there. So that are some of the uh, I don't know how to say, experiences that I have in some quite a few months. So that is why I put you here, that code control versioning is the most important thing that you need to have for your asset, because basically every time that you do a new run, you are replacing objects or creating new objects to the database, and that will affect it. Even if it is, you can say, well, let's see, we will have a baseline of our SQL Server, Azure SQL Server. We will destroy that container, and we'll create a new Azure SQL with that baseline, and we'll start from scratch. Yeah, but you lose 2 days. So instead of doing that, if you have your control versioning and you have your code analysis rules, you have your verification and everything, it will assess you. The other is monitor. Uh, you have to monitor your changes, right? So that's very important. The after and the before and after your changes. So that helps you to understand your infrastructure, how you left it. You want to? I have another right right now. I have another story that I had. Um, we use Azure SQL serverless database, and we have I think
Is that the one that turns off after inactivity?
right
Okay.
the one that puts in auto pause. So the problem is that and you're getting to the problem. The problem was that we were implementing it into production with Azure with serverless solution. And I told them, no, that is not a good idea. We need to have at least we need to move to another tier. So they said, no, let's go with what we have. Okay, and we went. And the problem is that when you put out a pause, you cannot put if you don't want out of pause. It will out of pause because it's serverless. And after 2 hours it put in pause and all the connections were lost and they wanted to like connect again, it was the transactional scenario. So all the typesetters were mad and well, we needed to change it to a different tier, and it was like a cost solution because everything was better when we changed it from to a other tier for SQL Server, but that cost a little bit more. But that's the cost you have to take care, right? So you have to think that first before doing anything. So that's one of the problems I had with this infrastructure. But you have to be very careful with the architecture that you're trying to implement every time in every uh, solution that you're trying to implement, right? If this fits to your scenario, this is more this infrastructure is designed for loosely coupled solutions where you need to have containers, and this architecture is good. Every architecture is good, but depends on the environment that you're trying to implement, right? This is just a scope and a glance, and depends on what you need. That is what you do, right? If the virtual machines is yours and helps you, that is the way to do it. But in a way that you can decouple, but for bits, not doing 100% differently, right? You have to test everything that you do to decouple and try to implement new architectures, but not all at once. I think that's my experience. So I don't know. That's what I have lived for. That's my experience from shifting from a DBA, from a traditional DBA, doing from on-prem to the cloud databases. But it's good, right now. The good part though, because in everything is good, there's some bright sides. You get to see a lot of different technology, which is not being able to do with other with virtual machines, for example. That it's a little hard to do. You have to implement something differently. So this is another way. So this opens your world to a whole lot of possibilities. So this is really really good to do if you want to shift to this paradigm. So I really even if it hurts a little bit to the start, I think it's really good to do the shifting. It gives you a glance of to a new different world to do in the data, right? So you were saying that you had an issue, or you are scared if you do something in your
Yeah, my coworkers want me to shift to like you have core migrations, for example. I
Oh.
still write them by hand.
Mm,
And
okay.
we don't use Azure DevOps to run them. But we do have it in source control, and we run
Mhm.
it through a tool
Right,
called DBUp, which is just a simple
right,
tool
right.
that just
Yeah,
Once your
the source
script's in order,
controlling
right?
for the code, right? The paradigm that allows you
But
to
that's what you're
control
getting
your
at, yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, exactly. That is why I wanted to like say 50%, 50-50 scenario, because the good thing about what is tested for more than 10 years, I think more than 15, I think, source control versioning works, right? Having your object level history works for your on-prem database scenario that we are used to do. So how the way is how to implement this with this new technology. So I think that, for example, I'm trying um, this flyway because it has this kind of solution. So not because I cannot move to entity framework. I cannot move from my entity framework to Flyway, but it allows me to use the monitor from Flyway personally to see what are the changes, not to implement, just to see. And well, and the same for SQL Fluff. I connect SQL Fluff to see the code analysis rules, so it can help me to assess me before I implement it in the pipelines, right? Like disconnected, not connected, right? So I know that a little step in a middle step is not like integrated step, but can help you because you imagine that you have like 20 scripts daily that you want to see each for each object. I really with versioning I know that you can go in versioning each one, but at the end you're going to miss one. So you need to have something automated that at least this SQL Fluff gives you a report. So with that report you can see the differences faster. So that helps me. I mean at least locally. So that's what I think it is a good way to do it. The other is I put here this is a little bit older, but it works. This what was it? The code analysis example for the SQL Server rules. That's old, but it works. And other I had like it was SQL smells something. I had this over here, I think, in the documentation. If not, I can give it to you. But this is all tools, but it helps you to do your SQL checks before to uh, verifying this code that you're testing. So, well, that's my experience at the moment.
I
So,
think Nate had a question as well.
okay.
Yeah, Carlos, I was interested in what is does this tooling help you to be able to revert? So if you're doing a release and you're releasing code and you're releasing database updates, and you find out there's something wrong that you have to
Mhm.
revert,
Yes.
does it give you the a
The
good
possibility,
option to be able
the
to?
other option, yes,
Mhm.
they do. Entity framework, no. Entity framework, no. But Flyway, yes. For the paid version, it has the option to revert the changes, and it advises you, so it lets you.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
So it'll change the schema, right? Is that what it'll?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Revert it back to what it was before you
Yep.
released.
Mm-hmm.
And is that that's kind of majority of what you use? You consider a database migration, right? Is a new release of software with the database changes with it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah. I hope that I know that not everything on ORMs are like in the there are not like a lot of documentation out there because this is like I have like 5 years or something like that. It's not a long time, but I think that at the end, this will be the scenario that we'll see in the next 5 more often. So I think that at least worth trying, right? At the end, I know it is stable because it is not like something like fails every time, because it is not. Entity framework, at least it works. The only thing is that it's for example, for entity framework, it's a little bit slower. I think that that is the word. It is slow, but and it has a lot of parameter options that you have to be very careful. Where you have to, for example, when you ship something, um, the output that it gives you, you have to like control the handle, control the output, the solution interface with the database. For example, the error that, for example, if there is some kind of error in the script that you're putting in the entity framework, you have to detail the you can detail the number of code, the error codes that you will display in your log. So you have to be like tweak a little bit there the entity framework. Plus, it is a little bit slow, not that slower, but it's compared with Flyway, I think it's a little bit slower. But it works. It works, and it's Microsoft, so you're fully Microsoft integrated there. So that's a good thing. You have all the tooling to use Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio 2019. I use, and so depending on what you have, it gives you all the Microsoft tooling, so it helps you. So
When you talk about these two tools, you're talking about using Entity Framework to do the migration. Is that correct?
yeah, to do the
Yeah,
migration.
and then Flyaway, you can also do it, and Flyaway looks like it has versioning, so you could go back to the
Correct.
previous.
Sorry,
So you get that
sorry
revert
if
thing.
I can misguide you there. Yeah, Flyway. The difference is that Flyway, not the paid version, not the community version, has the possibility to revert back the changes that you did does the comparison of the changes and advise you at each step that you're doing in the integration. So that is what helps you. That is, I think that is a cool thing that Flyway has, and it is good because I think not because I'm doing promotion here, but Redgate has a lot of experience doing with SQL Server, and so it has a lot of tooling. So they integrate those tools into that Flyway solution. So that is why it's a little robust, I think, in that way. So that is why they have all these advisors to give you support when you're implementing. That is what I think.
I was going to ask you, Carlos, which databases were supported by Flyway, but I found it. It's SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, and it looks like MySQL is in the works for at least some features. So that's a pretty good set of DBs to cover.
Yeah, and they are doing, I think that they're doing Cosmos, something like that, and they're doing something else. But yeah, the main ones are there. They're doing Cosmos for Postgres, which came out last year, So they are integrating to that. I don't know how much, if they compare it to Azure, compared to SQL at least, how much they have integrated that, but they say that they have it. So that's good to know. That's another option.
Cool. So does anybody else have any questions for Carlos before we let him go back to Guatemala? Okay.
I have one quick one, hopefully. So as far as when you're starting a new project, do you export a DAC file to get started and create your project, and then use either Flyway or Entity Framework to do the pushing?
Yeah, I do. But first I do, let's see if I have it here. Let's see, it's not that, but what I do is I get my backpack, sorry, because backpack is for the code. I do my backpack and I go with the backpack and I put it into my local container in my machine. So what I do is I do all the coding in my computer, in my like local sandbox, and then I push it back into the code to do the testing in the sandbox, in the enterprise sandbox, which is as Azure SQL serverless. So I go and git push to it and I test it there. So one is, but this is a local Git, not the main Git. This is just for the devs. And then
Cool.
I just then I go and when it's ready, well, you can it can implement it to the solution, but still I need to test it with the database developer team. So when that's done, then I can move it to the main solution, which is other Git, right?
Well, and that backpack process is just once to set it up and then you maintain it within the project. Right?
Exactly. Mhm.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing. So, um,
Well, let me jump in here and give you a real big thank you, Carlos. That was enlightening and a lot of good questions. Thank you, everybody who joined in. And you can watch for the recording soon. Usually it gets posted the next day, and it'll be at youtube.com/Boston Azure. And watch the usual spaces on Meetup for we have a bunch of, I think we have 7 more virtual talks lined up. We just have to slot them in. And as we talked about up front, before Carlos started speaking, we have 2 in-person events that we're planning out right now. One of them, which would be the local edition, Boston area edition of the Global Azure Bootcamp on Saturday, May 13th. So I hope to see you all in person soon. And thank you, big thank you again, Carlos. And
Thank you.
till next time.
Thank you. Take care. Have a
Yeah.
good day.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, Carlos.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.